Dermatology, the physiology of the skin, starting with the sweat glands or the sudoriferous glands. When the body becomes warm, sudoriferous glands produce sweat to cool the body. Sweat glands develop from epidermal projections into the dermis and are classified as Apocrine glands. That is, the secretions are excreted by exocytosis through a duct without affecting the cells of the gland. There are two types of sweat glands, each secreting slightly different products. An equine sweat gland is a type of gland that produces a hypotonic sweat for thermoregulation, as described previously. These glands are found all over the skin's surface, but are especially abundant on the palms of the hands, the soles of the feet, and the forehead. They are coiled glands lying deep in the dermis, with the duct rising up to a pore on the skin surface where the sweat is released. This type of sweat, released by exocytosis, is hypotonic and composed mostly of water, with some salt, antibodies, traces of metabolic waste, and dermicidin, an antimicrobial peptide. Equine glands are primarily a component of thermoregulation in humans and thus help to maintain homeostasis. An apocrine sweat gland is usually associated with hair follicles in densely hairy areas such as armpits and genital regions. The apocrine sweat glands are larger than equine sweat glands and lie deeper in the dermis, sometimes even reaching the hypodermis, with the duct normally emptying into the hair follicle. In addition to water and salts, apocrine sweat includes organic compounds that make the sweat thicker and subject to bacterial decomposition and subsequent smell. The release of this sweat is under both nervous and hormonal control and plays a role in the poorly understood human pheromone response. Most commercial antiperspirants use an aluminum-based compound as their primary active ingredient to stop sweat. When the antiperspirant enters the sweat gland duct, the aluminum-based components precipitate due to a change in pH and form a physical block in the duct, which prevents sweat from coming out of the pore. Aluminum-based compounds, due to a change in pH, form a physical block in the sweat gland duct. This prevents sweating. Sebaceous glands. A sebaceous gland is a type of oil gland that is found all over the body and helps to lubricate and waterproof the skin and hair. Most sebaceous glands are associated with hair follicles. They generate and excrete sebum, a mixture of lipids, onto the skin surface, thereby naturally lubricating the dry and dead layer of keratinized cells of the stratum corneum, keeping it pliable. The fatty acids of sebum also have antibacterial properties and prevent water loss from the skin in low humidity environments. The secretion of sebum is stimulated by hormones, many of which do not become active until puberty. Thus, sebaceous glands are relatively inactive during childhood. Skin changes due to aging. All systems in the body accumulate subtle and some not so subtle changes as a person ages. Among these changes are reductions in cell division, metabolic activity, blood circulation, hormonal levels, and muscle strength. In the skin, these changes are reflected in decreased mitosis in the stratum basale, leading to a thinner epidermis. The dermis, which is responsible for the elasticity and resilience of the skin, exhibits a reduced ability to regenerate, which leads to slower wound healing. The hypodermis, with its fat stores, loses structure due to the reduction and redistribution of fat, which in turn contributes to the thinning and sagging of skin. The reduced sweating ability can cause some elderly to be intolerant to extreme heat. The accessory structures also have a lower activity, generating thinner hair and nails and reduced amounts of sebum and sweat. A reduced sweating ability can cause some elderly to be intolerant of extreme heat. Other cells in the skin, such as melanocytes and dendritic cells, also become less active, leading to a paler skin tone and lower immunity. Wrinkling of the skin occurs to a breakdown of its structure, which results from decreased collagen and elastin production in the dermis, weakening the muscles underlying the skin and the inability of the skin to retain adequate moisture. Some diseases and disorders of the skin system. Protection. The skin protects the body from wind, water, and UV sunlight. It acts as a protective barrier against water loss, and it also is the first line of defense against abrasive activity such as grit, microbes, or harmful chemicals. Sweat excreted from sweat glands deters microbes from over-colonizing the skin surface by generating a dermicidin, which has antibiotic properties. The skin acts as a sense organ because of the epidermis, dermis, and the hypodermis, containing specialized sensory nerve structures that detect touch, surface temperature, and pain. These receptors are more concentrated on the tips of the fingers, which are most sensitive to touch, especially the Meissner corpuscle, which responds to light touch, and the Pacinian corpuscle, which responds to vibration. Merkel cells seen scattered in the stratum basale are also touch receptors. In addition to these specialized receptors, there are sensory nerves connected to each hair follicle, pain and temperature receptors scattered throughout the skin, and motor nerves innervate the erector pili muscles and glands. This rich innervation helps us sense our environment and react accordingly. Thermoregulation. The skin system helps regulate the body temperature through its tight association with the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is continuously monitoring body temperature and initiating appropriate motor responses. When the body becomes warm, sweat glands, accessory structures to the skin, secrete water, salt, and other substances to cool the body. Even when the body does not appear to be noticeably sweating, approximately 500 mils of sweat are secreted a day. If the body becomes excessively warm due to high temperatures, vigorous activity, or a combination of the two, sweat glands will be stimulated by the sympathetic nervous system to produce large amounts of sweat. When the sweat evaporates from the skin surface, the body is cooled as body heat is dissipated. In addition to sweating, arterioles in the dermis dilate so that excess heat carried by the blood can dissipate through the skin into the surrounding environment. This accounts for skin redness that many people experience when exercising.